All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and I am back, recovered from the WrestleMania hangover, the emotional hangover, culminating into Cody Rhodes finishing his story. And of course, that is today's topic, Cody Rhodes finishing his story, but not just the story on this lovely journey. But of course, I couldn't do it alone because this is too big for one man. And you know him, you love him, you've seen him on the Invasion episodes to help break down the invasion, the fantasy card of the invasion. I'm here with my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how we doing today?
Hey man, can't complain. Funny enough, last night I went to a party and it was a Y2K party and I wore my NWO shirt. I just rolled out of bed, still with my NWO shirt on, so I'm already ready. Let's do this.
Uh, I always wonder with wrestlers, they come on TV with their merch, their shirts and stuff. I always wonder if it's like the same shirt in story or they just get like a new shirt every time they arrive to the building. Because with
They're just
Kevin
like,
Owens, who just wears his merchandise, like in store, like I know, like on the shows they will like change shirts, obviously, but I just wonder if
mhm.
kind of like I wonder in story it's just like the same shirt, like a Mick Foley situation. But it's neither here nor there. But you, my friend, you brought up a very interesting topic that I wanted to talk about. What you want to talk about? I want to talk about the hero's journey that you
Yes.
mentioned. And the hero's journey is a type of storytelling device to describe a character's point A to point B, all the stories they come along the way, all the interesting characters and interesting progressions they make. Now, what is the hero's journey for people who may not know that type of storytelling?
All right, so we have a definition by the wonderful Joseph Campbell, who wrote a book, I believe, called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And it says the hero's journey, yes, the hero's journey defines a hero. Hold on. There we go. A hero's journey defined a hero ventures from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered and a divisive victory is won, excuse me. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. So, for those of you who that sounds like old-timey weird candy, that you're just like, oh, what does this mean? So we have some relevant examples here. So think like The Matrix, Tron Legacy, The Wizard of Oz, The Goonies, um, The Lord of the Rings. Pick one. They're all there. Um, but it's more so somebody that has to go on an adventure to figure out stuff about the world, stuff about themselves. So you're going to get a lot of this in like your superheroes and your fantasy and your sci-fi, not so much in your rom-coms. Eat, Pray, Love is not going to give you the hero's journey, but maybe they'll make one where it's like Eat, Pray, Love kind of like stumbles into Fight Club and they'll figure it out.
Yeah, with the hero's journey, the interesting part for it to me is everyone, especially in wrestling, has a goal. Whether it's in a movie
Yes.
or whether it's in WWE, AEW, everyone has a goal set out. And to achieve that goal, there are different places you'll make pit stops along the way. And in those pit stops, you are changed. And those
Mm-hmm.
changes happen to cause enough strife that when you get to your goal, you not just only have the goal, but your journey effectively changes who you are as an individual and as a person. And with Cody Rhodes, he's probably the best recent example of this long term hero's journey. Because for a while in WWE, especially, they had a phase where people were just given the championship. Like I'm talking
Yeah.
about, like Money in the Bank. There wasn't really any build up unless Money in the Bank was a part of their overall story of getting a title shot, like a Dean Ambrose, John Moxley. But there was a lot of people, even with the women included, where the Money in the Bank was like the easiest way to get somebody's first championship run, like from the jump. But with
Mm-hmm.
Cody, it was always him becoming the one thing his father never did, and that was WWE champion.
Yes.
And when Cody debuted, it wasn't really looking like, oh, he's going to be the next WWE champion. You know, he had like the blue trunks, no knee pads. Surprised he hasn't gotten any ACL surgeries recently.
Hmm.
But we're going to go step by step and we're going to dissect Cody Rhodes' hero's journey until it culminated into WrestleMania 40. Now, Marcus, do you think Cody Rhodes is the best example of this hero's journey? And is there any other wrestlers that kind of fit that category, in your opinion?
Um, I think the best is subjective.
Mhm.
You could do this. Anybody that I believe has a career that's maybe, you know, 3 to 5 years or more, you could probably do this with. Like, you could easily do this, especially with people that have been doing this for a while. You could do this with somebody like a Rey Mysterio, since did, like, he started out in ECW, he did stuff in Japan, he did stuff in Mexico, there was WCW, there was WWE, there was Lucha Underground. Um, you could do something um with somebody that I think is kind of underrated. You could do it with like Billy Gunn.
Mm.
You could do it with excuse me, you could do it with somebody like actually you could do it with like an X-Pac, since he did WCW and he also did WWF and WWE. Anybody that really has I say a solid chunk of years, you could probably do that with, and you can even do it with like newer individuals now, like somebody like a Jade Cargill.
Mm. Right.
Seeing how, she started in AEW, she was kind of moving up the ranks, and now she is working with WWE, and it might take like a year or two, so you could do like an early hero's journey, but like as she progresses, I think that'd be an interesting one. But yeah, you could definitely do it. It's applicable to people that have put the time and the work in.
Yeah. And now let's go on to Cody Rhodes' hero's journey. And if you like to name step number one in the hero's journey, there are 12 steps of the hero's journey. So we're going to go through a lot of Cody Rhodes' journey, but we have to start with the beginning, as all good stories are usually told. So, Marcus, take it away.
All right, so how we're gonna do this, as Richie said, is I'm gonna read it, and then he's gonna give us the little backstory. So think about this. I'm crawling on the mat. I'm coming in for the tag. Richie's a freshman. He's liven up the crowd. He's got some finishers and some signatures saved
Yeah,
up.
you gotta do. Yeah, that's how you do it nowadays. I'm going over my head. Doing the clap. So the audience goes over me.
Yeah,
I'm stomping on the steps. Marcus, give me the hot tag, and then
yeah.
that's how we doing
He's
it.
and depending on if we're feeling heel or face, we might be on the right side of the ring or we might be on the left side of the ring. Because they say, like, for all the TV tapings, if you're watching it, all the faces are on the left side, all the heels are on the right side.
Yeah, because on the faces you see their face, and on the heels you see their heels, which is
Mm-hmm.
how that came to be. So
Yes.
little fun nugget of trivia there.
All right. So step number one in the good old journey is called the call to adventure. This is the moment when the hero receives a call to adventure, which could be from a message, a dream, or an encounter with a mentor or guide. So take it away, good sir.
All right, so obviously receives the call to adventure, and of course that's Cody Rhodes coming into WWE, and we're going to start in 2007, where Cody Rhodes was introduced to Hacksaw Jim Duggan by his father, Dusty Rhodes. Now, Dusty Rhodes was working behind the scenes at the time, and the call to adventure, which came to a form of a message or a dream, the American dream, if you will, Daddy. So all that
Hard times.
happened, all times. But the interesting thing is, Dusty isn't the mentor or guide for long, because there then becomes a little bit of a story after Dusty Rhodes is out of the picture. Cody Rhodes goes on a nice little winning streak, beating undercard guys at the time like Charlie Haas, Shelton Benjamin, and then he encounters Hardcore Holly. Now, Hardcore Holly is an established veteran, and there's this neat little story where Cody Rhodes is trying to gain Holly's respect, but Holly keeps beating him, keeps beating him, keeps beating him. And Hardcore Holly is known for not being too fond of rookies. Cody being new rookie on the block and just chopping him, and you seeing his chest looking like ground beef after all these encounters. But then Cody finally beats Hardcore Holly in a match, and then they start teaming, and they start teaming, until finally they win the World Tag Team Championships from Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch in front of his father, who was on commentary. And this is the beginning of his call to adventure, his first championship. And even though this was at a period of time where most of WWE tag teams are like, let's throw them together. Let's throw and see if they sink or swim. It happened with Miz and Morrison. Happened with, if you want to go to a different company in TNA, it happened with Beer Money. Just a bunch of thrown together guys who are trying to make something out of nothing. And the term generic is used with this team, and I could see that because Cody Rhodes didn't really have a character. He was the blue chipper, he was the rookie. And
Hmm.
being named the rookie means you're allowed to make mistakes. So if he made mistakes, it would then be covered. Well, he's a rookie. But you can't use that for long. So being paired up with a veteran like Holly definitely helped Cody Rhodes in the long run, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like you said, him having Holly is an interesting twist because I mean later down the line, that was also part of the thing is like you had somebody like a Paul Heyman say, like all of these people trained under your dad.
Mhm.
You did not. So it's interesting how like that kind of came to be.
Yeah, like that foreshadowing was just like, if you look through Cody's career, it is true. He didn't get trained by his dad. He didn't get the overseeing by his dad. His dad helped him come in, but it's almost like the little league effect. You know what I mean? You don't want like people, if you like your dad's the coach or your family's the coach.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're
Yep.
on their team. It's almost hard to coach uh their kid because it's like it's their kid. You know what I mean? It's like you
Yeah.
like it's like training somebody from your family or training somebody from this. It's going to be a different kind of experience than training somebody that you don't know.
Yeah, and then also, even if that that kid, that child, nephew, whomever, niece, whatever, is a natural born athlete
Mhm.
and they are outshining people, people will still say, "Oh, you got to XYZ because your uncle, your dad,
Right.
your brother, you're this, they're the coach. So of course they're gonna put you up. Even if you're outshining people, because some people are not good, but they're gonna look for a reason to say,
Right.
hmm, something's fishy here.
Yeah, all eyes are going to be on you regardless whether you're when you're a legacy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And when you're a
Yes.
legacy, you're going to have double the amount of eyes on you and people watching your every move to fail. It's different when it's a John Cena starting out than a Cody Rhodes or Randy Orton starting out because they already have this established legacy about their family, and because of that there's added pressure.
Yeah, and even if like let's say your legacy, you come in, it's one thing to be kind of like cream of the crop. It's one thing to say like you come in and whomever you're linked to was winning championships and was, getting TV time and was on pay-per-views. It's also another thing if they were say a lower carder or a jobber and
Mm-hmm.
people are just going to be like, "Oh, so are you going to be a jobber too?"
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. They'll try again, they'll try and shoot you down until you prove yourself, and then they're just like, "Oh, I didn't realize you could be better than that." It's just like you didn't give
Yeah.
them a chance. Like you
Yeah.
didn't you didn't let them harness their skills. And of course, like when you come in and you're green, they're gonna look at you and be like, "Oh, look, they're green. Look at them. They missed a spot, or like they messed up a bump, and somebody could have got injured, but they're not." It's almost kind of like you get an asterisk
Mm-hmm.
next to your name. They look at you kind of funny and sideways, even though somebody else could make the same mistake, but because you are linked to this person, they're gonna be like, see, just like your uncle. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going to that, we're going to fast forward to the second step because we already got the first thing, the call to adventure. Cody is called to adventure. He's the current World Tag Team Champion. And what is number two, good sir?
All right, number two, the refusal of the call. At this stage, the hero may initially refuse the call to adventure, often due to fear, doubt, or a sense of inadequacy.
All right. And for my refusal of the call, it's the team up of Ted DiBiase Jr. And so Cody Rhodes is the first person to beat himself for the World Tag Team Championships, because at Night of Champions 2008, it was going to be Hardcore Holly and Cody Rhodes against Ted DiBiase and his mystery partner. And Ted DiBiase said, you know what, my partner is going to come, ref ring the bell, but I want to start with Hardcore Holly. So Holly's like, all right. But then Cody hits his finisher at the time, which was the DDT. And Ted DiBiase Jr. is like, all right, everyone, my partner, Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes is the first person to successfully beat himself for the World Tag Team Championships. And the heel turn is I don't want to say tricky thing to pull off, but you don't want to turn heel just for the sake of turning heel for a character change. There has
Yes.
to be a logical reason of why you should turn heel. And the reason was, again, you want to play this character of being, you know what, I'm a legacy, therefore I deserve everything that I'm happening. And plus, babyface Cody Rhodes at this time wasn't getting much character development out of Hardcore Holly. And like we were saying before, when you're a legacy, everybody's going to look at you funny because the opportunities that you are getting, is it because you're good or is it because of your name?
Yes.
And I think what helped Cody over Ted is that Cody looks so different from Dusty and his brother Dustin that people were not really comparing him as much as they were Ted DiBiase and Ted DiBiase Sr. Also didn't help that Ted DiBiase Jr. had his dad's name.
Yes. And it's interesting that you say that now, because I didn't even put like two and two together, because if you look at, say, like early Dusty and Dustin, both kind of like similar physique,
Hmm. Like the
similar
blonde hair.
hairstyle. Yep. And now look at him.
Yeah.
Like, same thing. Like, hairstyle the same, not to mention, like, he has the constant reminder of he has the dream tattoo. So
Yeah.
it's like, you.
That's not the only tattoo we're having a constant reminder
Oh yeah, I mean,
of.
of course. I mean, yeah, yeah. It's a cool tattoo.
It
The
is, yeah.
placement is wild.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Allegedly, he wanted it smaller. I'm not sure if I believe
Uh,
that.
uh, I would have. I honestly think it would have been cool if he put it on the other pec. So it's
Oh
just like
yeah.
you have like the dream and the nightmare. So you have like the past and the
Mm.
present. But sure, neck. Why not?
It's Hickey's probably.
Eh, yeah, can't really get it when you're permanently scarred there.
It's just America.
One big scar on the nation.
Uh, so,
I kid.
before we move on to the third one,
Mm-hmm.
the Ted DiBiase Jr. Pairing was always pretty interesting to me because it looked like for a while WWE was looking at Ted as the breakout guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at it back then, Ted was more built. Ted had a more natural ability uh, for his experience level, and it just seemed like he was getting more opportunities. Like if you remember the Marine 2, Ted DiBiase Jr. starred in it. I know the Marine franchise gets a lot of memes and flack, but when WWE puts you in a project like that before everyone started getting the project, it
Mm-hmm.
shows that they have some level of confidence that you are going to be somebody in the industry. And of course, as we see Ted DiBiase Jr. now, he has some run-ins with the government. So, uh, yeah, I think they made the right call of bringing Cody back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's unfortunate, um, kind of what's unfolded, and kind of like going back to what you said, it's really hard to shake the fact that, like, yes, he's a legacy, but he also just has his dad's name flat out. And
Yeah,
it's one thing to be like, an offshoot of somebody, but it's another thing to like, they have your name.
hmm yeah. It's a lot more difficult than that, and I think it's like Vince McMahon, right? It's like Vince McMahon Senior, Vince McMahon Junior.
Uh-huh.
There's always going to be a comparison, no matter how hard you try to escape that. But we're done with escaping because now we're going to journey number
Number
3.
three.
Yep.
All right. So this is called Meeting the Mentor. The hero encounters a mentor or guide who provides support, advice, and guidance on the journey ahead.
All right. For this, if you're a longtime fan of WWE, you know Cody Rhodes' first mentor was Hardcore Holly, but the one that actually made more of a difference was the legend killer, the Viper, Randy Orton. And it's so funny to me because I keep forgetting how young Randy is, like relatively young now, because back then when
Hmm.
he started the legacy, Randy, I believe, was only 28. So being a mentor that young to these guys who are younger, but not that much younger, is always pretty funny to me. But Randy Orton is, in my opinion, the peak WWE superstar when it comes to in ring promos, just presence about him. And now he's up to 275, which is amazing to me. Like he's just brawlic. He's just like a Greek god now. And with Randy at this time, and I think a lot of people wanted factions back to a certain extent
Hmm.
because back then we didn't really have any groups. We had Evolution for a little bit, but we didn't really have any sustainable groups. And with Orton at this time, the focus of Legacy was mostly on him because, of course, he's the leader and he was feuding with Triple H, Batista, what have you. And having DiBiase and Rhodes kind of as like his henchmen, but also teaching them along the way of how to be a proper star. And I always found it funny because in Legacy, it did boost Cody Rhodes' and Ted DiBiase's profile because they feuded with DX, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, but they actually won all their tag team titles before joining up with Randy Orton. So, as a part of the Legacy, they didn't win any championships, but they were in the rings with the veterans, which is arguably more impactful to your career.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Having having that rub from the locker room from the guys in the back, and it's a good look all around because there's a lot of politicking. There's a lot of like when the new kids come in, you have some people like you said, hardcore Holly, not a fan. You have other people that are just like, yeah, I'll show you the ropes. So it's a very interesting like uh, seesaw kind of because some people are just like yeah, and some people are just like you don't know what the hell, get out of the locker room, like
Right.
go
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So beat it, kid.
Mhm.
you know so yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And then also them kind of having the belts beforehand, I think it kind of boosted both ways because if you have the belts, even though there's periods in WWE where like everybody had a belt and then they're switching them and you don't know who has what,
Mhm.
but I think they were kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see if it worked. So if you had a belt, even if it was for a short time, that means they had some semblance of faith until Vince decided to like spin the Jeopardy wheel and say, this guy. But it looks good for them, but it also looks good for Randy because even like you said, like they were trying to bring factions back. Even if you don't necessarily have a belt, if the people you stand next to have belts,
Mhm.
that looks good for you as well because you're just like, I might not have one, but the people that I partner with, the people that I run with, they have them.
Mhm.
So by proxy, you know, it shows like I might not have one, but I have the ability to possibly get my hands on one.
Right. And it sounds cool when it's like, oh, I'm running with the WWE champion. I'm
Exactly.
running with Randy Orton.
Hmm.
And when Cody and Ted had the belts before Legacy, they did defeat Batista and John Cena for the belts. And a lot of people don't remember that, but it just kind of shows that they had faith. I think it was more Ted than Cody at the time, but they had faith that these guys were going to be going on to bigger and better things. And that's what the Legacy was kind of portraying at that time. And I just find it so funny that the breakup, like, because with all stories with heel leaders, like you have Evolution, where it's like eventually like someone's going to rise as a babyface and rebel against the uh, evil leader.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was Randy Orton was too popular that Cody and Ted had to be heels by proxy, and Randy Orton turned babyface, and then Ted and Cody were kind of out of luck for a little bit after the whole breakup angle. But it did boost the stock of Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes so much so that they got a WrestleMania match out of it, and Cody
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that prior. So
Mm-hmm.
it just goes to show the relationship with Randy Orton and the mentorship with Randy Orton boosted both Ted and Cody. But I think because they were kind of more so henchmen, and a lot of people were looking at Ted up here, Cody down here, it kind of evened out because I don't think there were many expectations for Cody as they were Ted. And when Ted started plateauing, Cody just kind of started rising up a little bit. And we're going to talk about that in the next step. But I just found it kind of interesting. That's how Cody's journey into the proxy of WWE kind of continued from that.
Yeah. 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 All right. So, you ready for step 4?
I am ready when you are, sir.
All right, let's do it. So, step 4 is called crossing the threshold. The hero leaves behind the known world and crosses the threshold into the unknown, often encountering tests, trials, and challenges along the way. New Japan Pro Wrestling / Single Star on SmackDown.
Yeah, so I figure both these kind of are applicable to Cody and his journey. If you want to continue for the his single star on SmackDown, this is the first time he was actually breaking out on his own, and he had to carry a promo or a character that's becoming dashing Cody Rhodes, later undashing Cody Rhodes, and later
Mm-hmm.
uh, Cody Rhodes with the nice little voodie. But this is where the true test is sink or swim. And I think Cody was given a blessing going to SmackDown because all he was known for was a Raw guy. And Raw and SmackDown at the time were two very different shows. You know, Raw was live, SmackDown was taped. And I feel like with SmackDown, it was a bunch of people who they liked, but weren't ready for the main show on their own.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the precursor to NXT.
Yeah, in some respects, yeah, because it's like you'll have people on SmackDown that you're like, oh, okay, this guy, they're kind of grooming to be a top star in WWE
Mm-hmm.
before they transfer over to Raw. They did it with Drew McIntyre, they did it with John Cena, famously. So it's pretty, SmackDown's almost like a trial run where it's like you're on one of the main shows, but we're just going to kind of let you cook a little bit and see what happens and what stories come about while we still have reliable veterans on the show like Undertaker, Rey Mysterio, Kane to give legitimacy to this brand. And what do you think about that of Cody Rhodes' dashing, undashing characters kind of being fomented in this process? Do you think it was the right decision for him to be on SmackDown kind of cooking a little bit, or did you think it deserved more of a spotlight on Raw? And did you think it would have like the same effect if he was on Raw?
Me personally, I've always liked SmackDown. Like, SmackDown's been my favorite of the two.
Same.
So for me, when people would always say like, "Oh, but like Raw is like the flagship show," I'm like, I understand that Raw was like the first one, but however, I always felt like Raw was good, but for SmackDown just had like its own, like you said, SmackDown had its own flavor to it, and it was almost kind of like you had a lot of your, for lack of a better term, you had like a lot of your smaller guys, your high flyers, your your light heavies, your cruisers. So I was always in the SmackDown, and the dashing and undashing is very interesting because it's a character that's been done before.
Mhm.
Um, you have you can almost kind of like pair it in ways to say like dashing would be like a Lex Luger, right?
Mm,
He likes himself. He's in the mirror. He's talking about himself. Loves himself. And then an undashing, I would say, um, would almost kind of be like a Mankind
mhm.
because
Like a
the
Phantom of the
mask.
Opera kind of deal.
Yeah, like he wears the mask. He doesn't really like himself like that. He kind of lurks in the shadows. Um, and giving him this character for some people, I think it would have felt really flat
Mhm.
because the whole thing is like, I like myself, I don't like myself. And for that to be like a major plot point in somebody's character, you have to really be good at what you're doing. You have to sell it well. Like, especially like the undashing part where he's coming out and he has the clear mask and everybody can see nothing's wrong,
Mhm.
but he's playing this to a T. And then he has like people coming out giving out, the paper bags for people to wear over their heads. And like he was given this thing, and I think he doesn't get credit for how well he excelled at it.
Mhm.
Because if you would have given it to somebody else, it could have definitely been like a snag for them.
Right. And especially with that, at that time, just the character development. Well, let's compare it to what they gave Ted DiBiase when they split up Legacy. He was given the $1 million championship. Nothing wrong with that, but it was kind of like a copy and paste,
Hmm.
Wish version of his dad's gimmick. You know,
The good old AliExpress version.
yeah, the new Midnight Express. But I also want to talk about the New Japan stuff as well because
Hmm.
it also fits in this category.
Yeah.
And when Cody left WWE, I think it was a little bit uncharted territory because the indies at that time were just beginning to grow again,
Yeah.
and
Get
Japan was
relevancy.
just growing again because you heard like all these matches about Tanahashi and Okada, the Bullet Club being a major factor
Yeah.
in New Japan, and
People were starting to like check in for the G1 and all that stuff.
right, and a lot of people who get released from WWE usually, they do like at the time, it's the autograph tours, it's like the special like events where you'll like you're that guy from WWE, but Cody really just kind of hit the ground running, and with his relationship coming into New Japan, they gave him the Bullet Club uh character right off the bat, and that's what legitimized Cody as part of the independence of that as well. So what do you think about the Cody Rhodes' shift into New Japan?
I mean, all the guys going into New Japan, as much as you have like the old school, like this person's a foreigner, they're bad, it still works.
Hmm.
They go to New Japan, and you got Kenny, you got Prince, you got AJ, you got the Bucks, and you have all these guys come in that are not from here, and now there's the foreign heel, and they're doing it to a T. And not only are they doing it to a T, now they're starting to recruit people. So it's just like him coming in with the name that he has. One second, please. Hold on.
Hmm.
Yeah. Give me one sec.
Yeah,
I'll be right back.
no problem. I'll pause it. All
But
right.
him, them being in New Japan and reeling in the local talent that could easily go elsewhere and could easily be, you know, star players and other things. It's like the foreigner gimmick to a T, and it worked well because they're getting matches, and they're winning championships, and he him and Omega are like having like crazy just bangers of matches, and it's like it really works. And again, like you said, the indies weren't quite um
Spotlight.
there yet,
Yeah.
but it was almost kind of like the early, I would say, the internet edition of like tape trading. Like
Mm.
if you knew where to look, you could like talk to people, they could give you links, they could give you like video files. So it was starting to kind of boost his profile a bit.
Yeah. Absolutely, and Of course, him be getting boosted with this and on his time on SmackDown, it just put a whole new perspective on how the people viewed Cody as a star. Because on SmackDown, it was about being an individual WWE superstar. And it's ironic that when he left WWE, becoming a part of a group enhanced his profile to another section of the audience that didn't quite respect Cody as an individual during that time as well. And as we move forward, we're going to go to step number 5 of the hero's
All
journey.
right. So step 5 is test allies and enemies. The hero must navigate a series of tests, trials, and challenges, often with the help of allies and the opposition of enemies. So this would be the Bullet Club slash Gold Dust.
Yeah, so let's talk about Goldust first. And
Okay.
with them, it's pretty interesting because they're not your typical siblings.
Mm-hmm.
They're half brothers, and I believe they're 17 years apart.
Yeah, there's a big like age gap.
There is a ginormous age gap with that, and I didn't know this like while watching it because this was during the storyline where the Authority fired Cody Rhodes, and then Cody Rhodes came back with Dusty and Goldust and became a team, and actually a very great team. You know, Cody and Goldust for a while. It was almost like a second renaissance for the Goldust character.
Mm-hmm.
But as a singles competitor, it kind of hindered Cody's progression of him not being a breakout star. Now he's more known as a tag team guy because before you had Team Road Scholars, you had all these makeshift tag teams that we're talking about off air about all these different makeshift tag teams, and now he's just with his brother as of now. Still great matches, but no further character development with that, and helping
Mm-hmm.
him fight off the Authority, which is great. They won the tag titles, but after that, after you have a bigger opposition than the Authority, there's not much you can do because unfortunately at the time WWE wasn't really focusing on their tag team division. So it's kind of like if you're not feuding for the tag titles, there's not much else that you're going to be doing creatively.
Yeah, and I mean that. The tag division has always had this weird stigma against it.
Hmm.
Like they, even WWE, who doesn't at one point they didn't care for the cruiserweight division
Hmm.
or like the light heavyweight division. They would put more into that than they would than the tag division, which was interesting because it's like you have more people and more opportunities to play with. But them being brothers is one of those things that it's always good for a storyline, but you can always see it kind of like coming down the pipeline. Like somebody's gonna turn on somebody, or somebody's gonna, get drafted somewhere else, and they're gonna split them up. I mean, we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah,
We've seen it past. We've seen it present. You could go back to like the Hart Foundation. You could go to the Dudleys. You can go to today where it's like Jimmy and Jay.
yeah.
Um, but them having that, it's interesting because it's almost kind of like, in a sense, the old guard and the new guard kind of running together, and they have this through line of family, but you can do a lot with that.
Hmm. And I figure the best tag teams, especially like that, not only just a brother aspect, but it's like that Venn diagram where there are similarities, but you could also point out the differences as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think Cody and Goldust work so well, is because you had a step in the new generation and the step in the old generation, but both of them had similar mentalities on how they uh, wrestle and how they come towards stories and creating compelling storylines. And we're going to shift gears to the Bullet Club or the Elite, which is how Cody kind of gained a new lease on life in this faction. And with the Elite, one of the biggest game changers, in my opinion, for wrestling in general was the Being the Elite show. And Cody had experience doing web shows for WWE, but Being in the Elite was this weekly show, with skits promoting their storylines that aren't just television based, and people really got into them, myself included, because it showed more characters, more bits. It was the whole Bullet Club Civil War, like we were mentioning, like when there's a group or a tag team Who's going to
Mm-hmm.
turn on the other is always the running theme within wrestling in general. And it later became the Bullet Club Civil War with Cody versus Kenny for a little bit. Who's the true quote unquote leader of the Bullet Club?
Yeah.
Do you think that was the right way to go with Cody's character, making him the bad guy in the Bullet Club because he's this outsider comparative to Kenny, who's pretty much been groomed and growing on the independence and Japan?
Um, I honestly feel no way good or bad, but it does make sense seeing that you have this guy in Kenny who is an indie darling, and then you have somebody else who is like a fantastic worker, but they have the the stigma of coming from the big guys, and now you're trying to play in our yard. That's literally like everything. Like you had like think about it. You have some people that will go and see a movie and they'll be like, that was good for an indie movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, why can't it just be a good movie?
Yeah.
Like, why can it do that? And then you have some people that they only want to see indie movies, like everything, like your AAA blockbuster is trash. Get it out of here. I don't want anything. I want no special effects. I want no superheroes. I want nothing that Disney or Sony touched. Boo. And you have some people that are just like, all right, like I like it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's good whether the budget was astronomical or not. But having him kind of come in and start to ruffle feathers and raise doubt was good, because it kind of shows that even you could do it on a number of levels, because you could say like, even like, look, these guys are foreigners and they're trying to pull people in, but even they can't get along, so like, why would you go there? Like, why would you mess with them? Or you could say like, oh, you could play it like, oh, I mean, he is, having these matches with Kenny. He's keeping up with Kenny. Can he pass him? You can kind of play on it a number of different ways, and then also, you can every group. Well, not every group, but sometimes groups splinter. So now it's just like, are you a Cody guy or are you a Kenny guy?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it was really playing off that team vibe, and I think a lot of people do. They do have their favorites. Team Kenny, Team Cody. I remember there were actually selling T-shirts about that on Pro Wrestling Tees, which goes credence to your point. And just the whole vibe of Bullet Club, and it seemed like this was the beginning of the end of Cody's nepotism persona, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
for the heel side at least. And people would joke at the time, it's like, oh, Cody's a 3-star savior because he only has good matches but not great matches,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get to that next threshold, that next breaking that next part of the glass ceiling was always going to be a criticism of it. So it was about Cody kind of leaping over natural ability and trying to use his name for one last go around. But the whole Bullet Club Civil War is probably one of my favorite storylines ever, just because of how unique it was for the time and just kind of building it off of an internet show that was gaining traction. And it was really cool to see. And also the whole team with the Gold Dust that was also trying to bring Cody out of his shell until they finally plateaued. And we're going to get to our next
Yeah.
we're going to get our
Yep.
next stage right here. So Marcus, please read it out.
All right. So we are at step 6. The approach to the inmost cave. The hero approaches the innermost cave or the heart of darkness, often facing their greatest fears and challenges. This would be Stardust / Life Without the Dream.
So Stardust gets a really bad rap, and I understand why. I love Stardust. I think Stardust was really fun. Main event caliber?
No.
Absolutely not. Really fun though, because I thought, like probably Cody thought, that okay, this is going to be a temporary thing until the turn happens. But then the
Mm-hmm.
turn did happen, and he was still Stardust. And I was like, I was like, oh no. I was like, no, we're still doing this. I'm like, how far do you have to go as Stardust after that? And there wasn't really much wiggle room to cause that. So, what did you think of Stardust in the beginning, and did you like it? And if not, when did you think there was a point where Cody should have turned back from Stardust?
Stardust is interesting for me from the outside looking in because at this point, I wasn't really keeping up, but I knew who Cody was. I knew who Goldust was, but kind of like looking back at it, um, so I kind of, I went back, I did my research. It's very interesting because it's almost kind of like they take Goldust as a base and kind of like dial it to 11, but not necessarily in the like kind of like offbeat sexual way that they did in the Attitude Era, but
Mm-hmm.
more so like he I honestly think if they played him right, Stardust would have been a really good heel.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had the potential to wreak havoc because you it's almost kind of like you could have did like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
with it. You could have had, um it could have been almost kind of like an Incredible Hulk thing. Like he's good, he's mild mannered, he's Cody Rhodes until a certain point, and then boom, like you push him too far, and now he's wreaking havoc as Stardust.
Yeah.
And I again, I'm kind of with you. I thought it was kind of goofy. I thought it was kind of gimmicky. But it wasn't terrible. And props to him because it's like everything that they throw at him, he is just like, all right, cool, I'll give it a whirl. It's almost kind of like our truth in a way. Like everything they throw at our truth, he's just like, all right, let's do this thing. So I agree with you that Stardust was a good character. It was a fun character. But also, yeah, like main event status. Mm,
Yeah, especially because Cody, and we'll talk about this more in the next step. Cody said that he didn't want to put on that suit ever again unless they were going to tell the story of him going back to Cody Rhodes. Because after a while, the Stardust character was played out because there wasn't really much trajectory you could go further from that.
mhm,
It's just pretty much like you'd be in mid card purgatory. It did
yeah.
lead to the very famous faction of the Cosmic Wasteland with the Ascension. Bet everyone forgot about that. He did feud with Stephen Amell, which is I liked Arrow. I liked Arrow for a couple seasons, and then it got weird.
much with all the CW superheroes. You got like
Yeah,
3-4 hot seasons, and
yeah.
everything was just falling off the rails.
It's just like season one, good. Season two, good. I'm like, oh, okay, now we're going here.
Yeah.
You just get some. That's a different podcast entirely. But
Yes.
Stardust was a no pun intended a crossroads for Cody in that he does have the ability to do this character really well, but he does it so well that the management's like, why would we change you back into something that we didn't think is working as well for a show as this? And because this filled a comedic niche to the show where Cody Rhodes is trying to
Hmm.
be a serious competitor as Cody Rhodes, they just didn't see him as a star at this time. Again, no pun intended, because but the thing at Stardust that I like the the most, even though it's cheesy, like everything he would talk about is just like star puns. And if you don't like puns, you're gonna hate Stardust. But Stardust, like he would call like the tag titles the Cosmic Key, the Intercontinental Championship, the Ivory Enterprise, just all these things. And Stardust actually tweeted me while I was at college because I was in a astronomy course, and I tweeted him. I'm like, hey, any advice for this astronomy course I was taking? And then he like sent back an entire quote. I want to see if I could actually pull it up right now.
Yeah.
Let's see, because it was pretty cool because I wasn't on Twitter often, but when I was, I would try to like shoot my shot and be like, "Oh, hey, do you have time for little old me?" But
young young Richie.
young Richie, let's see. No, that's Matt
S-
Hardy who responded to me. That was also pretty
Sleeping off the drinks at Murph's.
funny. Oh lordy. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I okay. I have it.
Sweet.
I said I'm currently taking an astronomy class. Any advice? Quote: Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Dash S on Earth TV. So I don't know what that is. And this is old Twitter too, because like the likes are stars and not hearts. So
Mm,
this was really old
mm.
Twitter. So yeah, Stardust will always have a soft spot in my mind. But enough about Stardust. If we could make a Stardust podcast, I would. But this is a Cody Rhodes Heroes Journey podcast, so we're going on to the next step.
Wait 1 second.
Ooh, okay.
Life without the dream.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Life with.
So, right around. I mean, if you want to take it away, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, the passing of the dream was very
Mm-hmm.
impactful for everybody in WWE because of the NXT
Yeah.
foundation that he helped create. You know, he was
Mm-hmm.
Dusty Rhodes' promo class in FCW to NXT and really developed everything. And it goes back to that Little League analogy, you know, where
Yeah.
it's like everybody else were being called Dusty's kids when well, you have his actual son in
Mm-hmm.
creative purgatory, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's just, it was a very tough time for Cody as he went in through his documentary and just like interviews in general, because you're like, I want to play on my dad's team, but you're seeing all these guys who are coming up, like the Shield guys, and then Sasha Banks, Bailey, Charlotte, who were Dusty's projects, now
Mm-hmm.
leapfrogging Cody into the main event scene,
Yeah.
and that's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's just a shame that like he couldn't not only get that opportunity but can't get that kind of recognition when you have the company opening calling these people Dusty's kids when you have Dusty's actual kid like
Yeah.
in purgatory, and you can't really abide by that.
Yeah. And then also, kind of going back to Stardust, he said like while he didn't like the character, it was kind of like with his dad passing, he used it to kind of hide because you're in face paint, you're doing all this goofy stuff. He said it was kind of like a shield for him almost,
Mm-hmm.
and he used the character to kind of hide a little bit, and he could kind of be goofy on TV and not necessarily like have to emote because Stardust is he's saying all this ridiculous stuff and he's hissing at people and he's like running around being goofy, but at the same time he's hurting because his dad um is gone,
Mm-hmm.
and his dad is the reason he got into the business, and like he's seen his dad do it and he's seen his brother do it, and having somebody who was like a pillar for your inspiration not be here, and then on top of that, like losing a parent is or losing a loved one in general, losing a friend, losing whomever is never easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one thing to like if you have like a regular job like you or I versus like somebody who has to go on TV and they have to sign autographs and they have to, be a part of a show and they have to do all these things. And you have to, you can't really turn it off. You have to be on. S-
Yeah, you know, and just like you have to be on 24/7 in that
Mm-hmm.
character, and like you said, it's a nice way to cope, you know, with loss and just being and dive into a character that has nothing to do with your actual thoughts and feelings. And it's on the same flip side, you know, on the flip side of that, it's also kind of difficult for the audience because you just see arguably this talent that you know he's related to this legend, and he's coming back as somebody that we didn't really need to continue, I guess is the right kind of like term for it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was actually Cody's idea because like you said, just to kind of like be behind the eight ball for a bit and just kind of like collect his bearings, but also he wanted to see the Stephen Amell thing through. But again, after that, you don't really have much room for it, and thus because you made the decision of like, hey, I'm staying in this character, and WWE is like, all right, you're going to stay in this character. And then he's like, all right, now it's time to go back to Cody Rhodes. And then again, you feel this niche that we need in our show. So you're going to keep being that. So it's one of those deals where, as we're going to get to in the next step, that kind of trajected his hero's journey even further.
All right, so step 7 is simply called the ordeal.
Mm.
This is the moment of the hero's greatest challenge where they face a major obstacle or enemy and must overcome it to continue their journey. So that would be leaving the WWE.
Talk about a big risk, right? Leaving the biggest wrestling company in the world. And with Cody, he didn't know anything else other than WWE. So him learning to separate himself from a company he was known for and that made him a star to the great unknown, and to develop that character by going to New Japan, by going to Ring of Honor, by going on the independents, really did establish himself as almost a pseudo internet darling, which is kind of something that I think a lot of wrestlers want to be before signing with WWE,
Hmm.
because then you build that hardcore fan base, and then that hardcore fan base will always support you in anything you do, and then you get too successful and then they turn on you, and which seems to happen a little bit.
As one said, they first they love you, then they hate you, then they love you again.
Yeah, so it's like it's a little funny with stuff like that, and we're going to talk about Cody's crowd reactions in other places uh, during this journey. But what did you think about Cody Rhodes' decision to leave WWE and how big of a gamble it actually was?
Um, Well, the gamble was huge because you have multiple people over the years who, especially now that the indies are starting to crop up and they're starting to be relevant, you have people that will say, oh, you're not treating me well here. I'll go somewhere else. And they go somewhere else and the grass isn't always greener. They don't get the push, or, they might get injured,
Hmm.
or, it might just not work out. Um, and it was a huge gamble because back then, like you said, the internet is starting to get traction with the indies. You're starting to, get internet shows and little shows here and there. But WWE is still the biggest meal ticket there is right then.
Hmm.
There, again, going back to like, trading links, tape trader, stuff like that. Like if you know, you know. However, this is they always say, this is where the big boys come to play because they were the biggest game in town.
Hmm.
And leaving, not only leaving, but going to a completely different land where, you are the outsider, you are the foreigner. It could have easily like fell flat on his face. I mean, having guys there like good old Prince, Kenny, and Young Bucks and AJ, having guys there kind of, I think, softened the landing a little bit. But he could have easily like went there, kind of got in, because you see all the time with just like regular factions, somebody comes in, they join, and you think, oh, they're gonna get a push, they're gonna get a storyline, and they're just carrying belts, they're mid carder, or they get like a dumb storyline. It's just like, yeah, this person, they carry my gear and they lose it, so now they have a match, or just
Yeah.
like, it's just like, come on, like you could have done so much better with this person.
Hmm.
And you see it time and time again. So for him to have this thing and just say, you know what, I'll figure it out, it's a huge gamble.
And that gamble certainly did pay off because he actually would gamble again while even on the indies, and that's going to lead us to the next step.
All right, so this would be step 8. It is the reward. The hero achieves a award, often in the form of knowledge, insight, or a powerful object that helps them on their journey.
And I put here the Young Bucks slash All In.
Yeah.
And the friendship with the Young Bucks was broken by Kevin Owens, who was good friends with the Young Bucks. And Kevin Owens actually contacted them when Cody was going to be on a PWG show saying, hey, this guy's good. Just look out for him for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Cody, we see him now, we joke around, the suits, the immaculate, like politician-esque presence about him, and he was kind of like that on the indies for a bit. Like he had to learn about the gimmick table, where you would sell, t-shirts and stuff, go hand over fist. And the Young Bucks really did help Cody along the way in just how to do the indies and make it a credible business, which they learned from Colt Cabana, because Colt Cabana was kind of like the forefather of the gimmick table and promoting yourself on with podcasts and stuff, when podcasts were relatively non-existent and within the wrestling realm.
Mm-hmm.
And that all comes to a head at All In, which was funded by Cody Rhodes, the Bucks, and I believe some key people at Ring of Honor, because at the time Dave Meltzer, who was a astute wrestling journalist, uh, and subjective, very subjective. And there was a tweet that somebody put out saying, "Can anybody sell a 10,000 seat arena in the United States that isn't WWE?" And Meltzer said, "I highly doubt that." And Cody tweeted back, he's like, "Look, I'll take that bet, Dave. Just give me the Bucks, myself, and 3 months to promote." And All In was a name that Cody's sister Tennille came up with, because it's like you're putting all your chips in,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna want to cash in and see how this show that was on paper funded by wrestlers and just wrestlers, and it was for the fans, and All In was sold out in 30 minutes, like not a ticket to be spared. And it really did show at a time there was an audience for these guys. It was an audience that was interested in this part of professional wrestling. And it really was like a show that was for the fans, by the fans, to some degree. Now, do you remember All In? Do you remember how All In was?
No.
So All In was basically like a prelude to an AEW like show. And
Mm-hmm.
Tony Khan was at that show, and it really started to kick things into gear about a potential rival to WWE. And
Yes, I remember. I remember watching kind of like a review video, and they said like that's where the ball got rolling
yeah,
for that.
and you had like a bunch of veterans on the show too. You had Rey Mysterio, you had Chris Jericho made an appearance, and then you had new talents, like you had Hangman, you had
Mm-hmm.
the Bucks, you had Okada coming in, you had Cody and Nick Aldis for the NWA Championship. It kind of seemed like a hodgepodge, a good smorgasbord of, this is what WWE's not showing you, but here's the different types of wrestling
Yeah.
that are available to you. You just got to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
And All In was an opportunity for fans who only heard about this get little snippets of what it's about and how different it could be from WWE. And I'd say when they went All In, they kind of doubled their profit, so to speak, and that's taken lightly. And they also had sponsors for it. They had Cracker Barrel as one of the sponsors, I believe. I think Hot Topic was a sponsor, and it was one of the first times, because Hot Topic actually contacted WWE about, like, the Bullet Club shirts, for Bullet Club, Young Bucks, Kenny, Cody,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Hey, what are these Bullet Club shirts?" And WWE was like, "Yeah, you kind of want to talk to these guys," and they talked to, like, the Bucks, Kenny, Cody, and they were getting their shirts sold at Hot Topic stores, which is great because it's almost like a mainstream store with
Yeah, it's
Hot
a national
Topic.
retailer.
Yeah, so it's like that shows how big this movement was, and it's crazy that this is only like a like 5, 6, 7 years removed, and how much the business has changed since then.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's like you said, it's betting on yourself, and it's risky. But even like to this day, you can still order Bullet Club shirts on Hot Topic, because I was actually looking at Bullet Club shirts just a week or two ago, and like one of the retailers that popped up was Hot Topic, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting. But like it's one of those things where if you watch a product long enough, you can kind of have like certain gripes with it. But that's like when you have people that will say, I watch college football, I don't watch the NFL,
Right.
because they don't like the politics, and like just like the more pure game, and they'll just like, I don't watch the NBA, but I'll watch March Madness. And that kind of has that feeling to it, because it's kind of like you have people that are just like, yeah, I know about the WWE, but meh. And then like here's this thing that comes along, and yeah, you have other things, but now, like you said, they have like national sponsors, Hot Topics selling the shirts, they're going back and forth with Dave Meltzer, and um what an interesting character that man is.
Yeah.
They're going back and forth with Dave Meltzer, and it's just like they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Mhm.
And I mean, you've seen it time and time again where somebody goes, I'm gonna make my own wrestling show. It kind of reminds me of the Bender meme, like, I'm gonna have my own with blackjack and hookers. And they go and they try to make a wrestling show, and it's disjointed, or they get people that would be good for an appearance but not necessarily good in ring, and they're past their prime. And they don't think like, I always find it funny that like managers and like valets and escorts are kind of being phased out. However, if you have somebody that knows the business and is good on the mic and has like a decent like stage presence, they still have life. Like, you could still put somebody in a valet position. Like, look how they're using MVP. Like, he came back,
Mhm.
um and he might not be as active, but like MVP, he's getting stage time. He's in stories, he's this and that. But like, it's interesting um that they again went all in, and they had people that were kind of like the same hive mind, for lack of a better term, but just like, I think we could do this together. Like, I think we can make this work.
Mhm.
And that's always an interesting thing to see. And even if it would have fell flat on his face, it would have been something interesting and something outside of your Raw, your SmackDown, your NXT, because it's a new thing. And it kind of reminds me of like when new technology drops, and everyone's just like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and you have people kind of like sniffing around it, and you have your naysayers that just like, I've always had this is the one I like. And then you have people that are early adopters, and you have people that are like late, such as myself, but they'll kind of come around and be like, oh, okay. And then, even though they're late, you still have individuals that will kind of do their research on the back end, and then kind of get caught up. So then, like, when a pay-per-view comes around, or like a house show or something, or like even if somebody's doing like autograph signings at a con or something, like, oh yeah, like you're the guy from the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting journey for them to say, screw it, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah. We'll do it live.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna go to the next step, the next portion of the hero's journey, and what is that, Marcus?
All right. So we have the road back. So this is step 9. The hero begins the journey back, often encountering new challenges and obstacles along the way. So this would be good old AEW.
Good old AEW. Now, I'm not sure if they did anything newsworthy this week, but that's neither here nor there. Uh, so, AEW, the first legitimate competition for WWE on national television since WCW.
Hmm.
And Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and the Elite being a part of All Elite Wrestling, it it was on fire when it started because a lot of people were intrigued and people wanted new uh, type of pro wrestling, because this was during the era where I think, like, for whatever reason, every match was 2 out of 3 falls because Vince didn't want people wrestling during commercial breaks. There was also just a creative lull for a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
there was another thing. It was like the wild card rule for Raw and SmackDown, where it's like 3 or 4 people from Raw or SmackDown can show up on the other show at a time. It was just like creative wasn't really there, and this was something new, exciting. Colors were brighter, the sets were brighter, and for Cody, it was just as important for him in front of the camera than behind the camera as well, because he would, be in the gorilla position or the go position, and he would call the action. He would do the time cues of all the promos, matches, segments, what have you. For yourself, how important is AEW to current day wrestling and Cody's journey overall?
I would say it's extremely important. Like there was a podcast where somebody asked they asked Dustin like how has Cody grown, and Dustin was like, one of the first things he said was just like he is very into the business. He studies, and you saying like, yo, like he's in the gorilla position. He's, you know, doing the time cues. He's telling people, you're up next. He's figuring out finishes. That's something that I think a lot of the people take for granted. As far as how to do it, it's one of those things like when it, for lack of a better example, it's almost kind of like when you know how to tie a tie and you can do it,
Mm-hmm.
but like trying to show somebody else how to do it and like how to do it effectively, and like, this is your knot, this is how you do your knot, this is how to make sure you can adjust it, this, that, and the third. And then like having that in your back pocket, like learning how to do the time cues, and learning how to do the promotion, and learning how to do the merch tables and this and that. Like the more you can do, the more you can be used, and the more valuable you are. And I think that's why AEW um was on fire out the gate, because you had all these people who were not only wrestlers, but they were doing the internet shows, and they were doing the merch tables, and they were like remixing the Bullet Club shirts, and they
Mm-hmm.
were, they really had their fingers in so many pots, versus somebody who will like they'll wrestle, they'll go back to the hotel room. And it's funny because like I was watching a Maven video, and he said like that's one of his biggest regrets, and that's kind of why he got canned, is because they would set up the ring early,
Mm-hmm.
and people would go out and just like practice moves and kind of like run the ropes, and get like warmed up and get ready, and he would never go. And Laurinaitis was telling him like, hey, like go do this, go hang out, go kind of like sharpen your skills, and he wouldn't do it. That's one of the big reasons he got canned. So for them to like be all about it, I mean, it was fantastic, and that's why I think it took off the way it took off. Now, it's one thing to be fire out of the gate, and it's another thing to be stable. And I think that's what they're trying to figure out now. I think that's kind of one of the hardships for them now, is like, okay, so you have talent, you have a space to use and show your talent, but how do you make this product viable? How do you make this product last long? Because it kind of seems like, you have some wrestlers that are great, some that are not, but it's always kind of like every other week there's some sort of AEW is in shambles some way, somehow. This person doesn't like this person, here's footage of that, and these people are fighting, and but starting it, uh they done really well, but they're in the sense that it's easy to start, but it's hard to maintain. Like I remember there was a Dr. Dre line on a Kendrick song. He's just like, yeah, you said you liked my house, you know the easy part is getting the house. The
Mm-hmm.
hard part is keeping the house.
Right. For the people who saying AEW's in shambles, like they can't come back from this.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I went through the entire TNA saga on Spike TV. I went back and I saw WCW in 2000. Uh, Granted, something that may or not happened in the past week was pretty bad,
Yeah.
horrible even.
But is it Vince Russo and Dixie Carter bad?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, granted, that one thing was very, very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, this is the difference between that and this. This is a vanity project for Tony Khan. So, as long
Yeah.
as he can afford to put more money into it, it's going to last. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's essentially what it's going to be. But for the beginning, Cody really just kind of like on his road back. This is where he honed his craft to be a star, top star, to be that
Mm-hmm.
guy. Like he was on the Go Big Show, as a judge or a panelist. So he was going outside the AEW realm while still promoting the product, even though. And I'm gonna get to the next. We're gonna get to the next step, but the next step, in combination with something that I put there, is actually going to be a turning point for Cody's career in AEW. And Marcus, what is the next step of the hero's journey?
All right, so you're on step 10 that is called the resurrection. The hero experiences a moment of death and rebirth, often symbolized by a physical or metaphorical transformation. Hell in a cell.
So, one is Hell in a Cell, and the other, I'm gonna lump some AEW stuff in here too.
All right, do it, man.
So with AEW, if I'm not sure if you were watching during this time, but the crowd was turning on Cody Rhodes because he blocked himself from challenging the World Heavyweight Championship, and he was very determined to make this stipulation stick because there's been many years where people who were high in the company, whether they were bookers, whether they were, in Cody's case, executive vice presidents, and you're being placed in the top position to be a champion, and people are going to say, "Oh, you're only in that position because you're the boss." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like a death in Cody Rhodes' career, because if you're going to ex-nay yourself out of the top contention for the championship where the fans want you to be there, anything you do is kind of like, what's the purpose then?
Yeah, if you can't reach the top of the mountain, why are you climbing the mountain?
Yeah, like Cody Rhodes, he did phenomenal with the TNT Championship. Great stuff with him, Brody Lee, Darby Allin, the TNT Open Challenges. Great stuff. Got Eddie Kingston a job, got Ricky Starks a job due to those challenges. But it kind of killed Cody's career because there were a lot of odd promos and angles he would be in. Like there was the one with QT Marshall, there was one with Anthony Ogogo, there was that meme one where I believe it was like Cody solved racism or something. Like, did you hear about
Oh
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I saw
yeah.
that one.
And there's like somebody made like a superimposed picture of like MLK, and like Cody's in the background, like overseeing it.
I also saw people compare him to like Homelander from
Yes, yes,
The
yes.
Boys.
Like that,
Like,
because like came out in his attire as like Homelander, and people are like,
mm-hmm,
"Oh, this is like a 4D chess move of Cody is going going to be a Homelander like heel. He's going to renege on being whatchamacallit, of not challenging for the championship ever again. But Cody just
mm-hmm,
really wanted to be the John Cena face of AEW, and it got to a point where it was like during a 6-man tag match, Cody would like throw out the weight belt, and people were like throwing the belt back into the ring. And for me, like if I was in that crowd, I'd be horrified getting hit by a flying weight belt. Those
yeah,
things suck.
yeah, and it's also like them kind of rejecting the merch that somebody thrown also gives flashes and shades of One Night Stand with RVD and Cena.
Yeah, and it's like when fans are that passionately about you that they despise you, not enough to like off you off, but enough that we don't want to see you. Like it's X-Pac heat, which
Yep, go away Heat.
go away heat. And that's what Cody was getting at the time, because there was not much more for his character to do than to be in that top mix. And also, weirdly enough, like Cody's stories never intersected with the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega or the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
Elite. He was kind of like what they dubbed the Codyverse. where
Yes.
he's like just kind of like into a realm onto his own, and there was like little to no interaction, even though we know they're good friends. And if you were watching Being the Elite, you're like these guys are great friends. Why are they just like not interacting with each other on television? So it was a lot of odd things that happened and occurred during that time. But also another thing, a part of the resurrection when he went back to WWE, the often symbolized by a physical transformation, was the pec tear in before Hell in a Cell. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I watched this match, damnedest thing I've ever seen. A completely torn pec, bruising from the pec to the bicep to the arm.
Mm-hmm.
Cody lied about the pain so he could compete in this match. He nearly threw up during this match. Marcus, did you see this Hell in a Cell match?
I have not, but I know of it. Like I've seen
Yeah.
like highlights from it. Me personally, I would have like, man, I wake up the wrong way, and I'm just like, this day's gonna suck. You know, I'm just like, oh man, did I sleep wrong? Like, why is my neck like, eh? And this guy has like a whole just pec just torn, and I'm just like, good on you. Couldn't be me.
Yeah, it was just like so surreal watching it because the crowd, it was like a abnormal hush where it's like, should we be cheering for this? Should we not be cheering for this? And there were like some comments I was reading on after the show went off the air. It's like, oh, that was a nice makeup job that they did by the team, and I'm just like, wrestling's predetermined, but it ain't that fake. It's like,
Yeah, like you can't do that, especially with them in the match. It would have definitely like
yeah.
rubbed off or like faded or just
Yeah,
like
and with people saying that like WWE was irresponsible letting Cody in,
hmm
I will say it's not my first choice. However, Cody
hmm
Rhodes' pec was a complete tear, so can't do anything worse to it because it's already completely torn. you know, so it's just like as long as he could manage the pain, why not? And then you go get surgery. And
Yeah,
and that was probably like I think that solidified, at least in my mind, a lot of fans where it's like you might not like Cody, but can't deny his appreciation for the business.
yeah. And us as fans, we it's one of those things like you don't know what it's like unless you've been in kind of a situation where you're performing. Like I know like you have a bit of a theater background, so like when it comes showtime and let's say you're not feeling the best, but you're going to try and do everything you can because you want to be part of that production. You wake up and you're everything from the neck up is either clogged or running or not working. You're like a Theraflu, NyQuil, Dayquil, honey, something's got to work. And like I myself, like I like doing improv. Um, so it's just like on the nights where I would go to this one art gallery and do improv, it was just like I could be sick any day but second Friday of the month.
Hmm.
I don't care. Just give me second Friday. That's the day I want. Like I don't care if I felt like I got hit by like a million buses the day before or the day after. Just give me that Friday. So I understand it, and for them to try and hold WWE liable, I could see why, but I could also see like it's kind of like if this is what he wants to do,
Hmm.
um it's kind of his call. It kind of reminds me of like people freaking out about all the spots and bumps that Darby Allin takes, and
Hmm.
it's kind of like I mean, I get it. I understand it. However, how many times if somebody says like, dude, you have to stop, like you have to calm down, and he's just like, I mean, if I can still walk by the time I'm 30, I'm great.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Darby Allen because he broke his foot even though he was going to climb Mount Everest without training it. So I think that was a blessing in disguise because
hmm
if you're not training to climb Mount Everest, something tells me we wouldn't have been seeing Darby Allen ever again. But now it's
Yeah.
pushed back to next year, so maybe he'll have time to train. But Marcus,
Yeah.
let's go on to step number 11 in the hero's journey.
All right, step 11. It's called The Return. The hero returns home, transformed and changed by their experiences, armed with new knowledge and insight that they can use to benefit their community. Cody coming back to the WWE.
Yeah, kind of self-explanatory. The return, Corey Graves said the prodigal son has returned with Cody Rhodes. New aura about him, the same presentation he was in AEW. And this is kind of the first time, again, since AEW existed, this was the first time where somebody jumped to from AEW to WWE, and that being one of their EVPs was insane at this time. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
was a turning point in both companies, both in terms of creative and just their feel in general. And you could criticize WWE for a lot of things at this time. The one thing that they did flawlessly was Cody Rhodes' return, and for him returning as a top guy in that industry, just because of all the experience he had, with All In, with New Japan, with AEW, and just crowd control in general. When Cody came back, is there anything that you would change, or do you think they WWE did his presentation pretty much as spot on as they could do?
I mean, of course, the big caveat of WrestleMania 39 is always it's always in people's like, what are we doing here? But I think they did it well, and I also think that given his size and his stature, the people that were still around when he came back kind of don't get the credit because I mean, yes, he comes back, he's a top guy, he's a baby face, but let's like in his absence, the you still have big guys. You still have like, your 6 footers, your 7 footers, but more of like your light heavyweights, your cruiserweights, your bruiser cruiser tag teams, or more people that are kind of like his stature, like say like a Dean Ambrose, a Seth Rollins, they're getting shine and they're putting on great shows. So he kind of gets the benefit of like now you don't have to look like a Mack truck on legs to come in and be um you don't have to look like a behemoth to be the top guy,
Hmm.
but they did handle him really well, because he comes back and they put him in programs. Now he's fighting Rollins, and they got the whole bloodline situation going down. And um given that the one thing of Rhodes has never had this prestige here, so coming into it, he's already kind of like poised to be a top guy. He's poised to have this great storyline. He's poised because he did the work outside of it. It almost kind of reminds me of like um way back like early 2000s, like street ball was a thing. Everybody, like, it was a big phenomenon, but you had people that were like NBA players going to like the Rucker in New York, which was like a big street ball mecca, and you had guys that were like full-blown NBA players coming to play like street ball games because it was a different level of gameplay, it was a different level of recognition. So that kind of reminds me of that in a sense. Like he left to go play, or like when you have guys that will are like really good, but they'll go play with like college athletes, or they'll go play, intramural games, or they'll go play, you know, in any sport, because it's like you're leaving to kind of not only sharpen your skills, but you're leaving to see what's out there. Because like if you are stuck in this bubble, WWE is its own product. They have their own ring sizes, they have their own work rates, they do things a certain way. And yeah, you can excel, you can exceed, sure. But if you leave and you see, New Japan does it a little bit different, or like a Ring of Honor does it a little bit different, you can kind of pick and choose um these different aspects to propel yourself. It's almost kind of like if you're cooking and you cook one dish the same way all the time, you have nothing to expand on versus like, all right, like if I cook it this way and I come over to your house and I'm like, yo, show me how you cook this. And then you cook it your way. I'm like, oh, like, so that's the season you use and you like brine it this way versus that way. Now you have insight that you didn't have before. And I mean, they did give him like a good platform to stand on as well.
Yeah, especially when you have the it's night and day of how he was treated the company the first time versus
Absolutely.
this time, because now that you have that company machine behind you, obviously you're gonna go out there and you're gonna get pretty much promoted in a very completely different way. Like they had a countdown clock to Cody Rhodes.
Hmm.
When have they ever done that to another WWE superstar? Never. So now when Cody returned, he was a new man, like you said. He was in a position where WWE they had these superstars, but now Cody Rhodes, like we were talking about with his team with Dustin, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Hmm.
Cody Rhodes kind of felt like 1 foot still in WWE, but he also still had this foot in the whole AEW movement, which in comparison made the business better because since AEW was creative, the whole business in general kind of took this whole shift creatively, and now WWE currently is prospering from it.
Hmm.
And Cody's kind of like the face of that whole turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Him, like you said, kind of having his feet in both things. With him transitioning from one to another, he gets to see kind of like the blind spots of one and the blind spots of another, and kind of make maybe like, all right, cool, like I had some shortcomings when it came to this aspect in AEW versus like, I'm in WWE now. I can kind of use where I botched over there to excel over here.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Marcus, we are in the final step of the hero's
Yes.
journey. What is
Hmm.
it, if you please?
So this would be the last step, step 12, freedom to live. The hero achieves a state of freedom and enlightenment, often living happily ever after in a state of balance and harmony. And that would be finishing the story.
Now, let's talk about this whole finishing the story thing because it's been a meme over the past couple of years since Cody
Yes.
has came back. We thought he had a great chance of finishing the story last year at WrestleMania 39, but
Hmm.
he took him a year, finished at WrestleMania 40. In your opinion, what would have been the biggest difference if he were to finish that story a year before?
If he would have finished the year before, while I think it would have it would have benefited him either way, but I think the hype around him coming back would have been interesting now because he it's almost kind of like they built him up and then knocked him back down to an underdog, and everybody likes an underdog story.
Hmm.
But like you said, they're doing countdowns, they're doing vignettes, they're, everybody's like clamoring, so everybody knows like he's coming and he's going to be a top guy. But for him to not get the top prize, um I see why people were upset, but I also see why like the they almost kind of like took their time in building him up and were like very purposeful. So like they gave him, the double the back-to-back Royal Rumbles, and they did all the vignettes, and they made sure that you knew that this guy was coming back. So and also just Roman being kind of like the new Cena in the sense that like you already know when Roman comes in the ring, it might be a good match, sure, but you know who's going to walk away with the title.
Right.
And then having it, it was interesting because you have people that might have been like a B-list player, but beating Roman could have gave him that push. But Cody's coming in as an A player, like an S tier player. So now it's just like, oh, okay, like you're not going to give him the hero's welcome um off the bat. It's almost kind of like while he had this long extensive hero's journey, him losing at 39 to get it at 40 is almost kind of like another journey in and of itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And with WrestleMania 39, I think I was one of the only Cody fans that was okay with the decision.
Hmm.
Because if you look at it when Cody returned, he returned at WrestleMania 38. He only competed for about 3 months until he tore his pec. From because that was April to beginning of June, and then he comes back at the Rumble, wins the Rumble at number 30, which I thought was a kind of an odd place because if you want to promote him as a babyface, I don't think coming in at number 30 is necessarily the way to go. But I see what they were doing there, especially with that. And then it's January, February, March, and then you go to April. Cody Rhodes, if you were a new viewer to WWE, you only had 6 months with him for his journey on television.
Hmm.
And if he were to win that championship right away, it would have been a great moment. But who knows how the crowd would be there long term? We saw it with John Cena, we saw it with Roman, we've seen it with Batista, where we've even seen it with Seth Rollins. Once you get to the top, then it becomes how do we make you interesting as champion? And for baby faces, there's going to come a time where there's going to be a challenger that's going to be more interesting than you or as interesting as you. And when
Hmm.
that happens, people are going to start rooting for the challenger. It's like the Rocky effect. It's kind of like Batman in a way too, where Batman has this rogues gallery of supervillains,
Yes.
and you're only as good as your villain or your
Yep.
opposition. And if your opposition isn't to that level of, oh, this person is a credible person to face for the championship, then if anything falters below that, then you're going to see, especially for babyface champions, you're just going to seem like you're beating up on somebody who doesn't really have a shot.
Yeah, it's gonna be like you're punching down,
Hmm.
because they didn't build this other individual up, and then if they do beat you,
Hmm.
everyone's gonna be like, "Yo, like what? That was weird. Like, how does this play out now? Like, what is?"
Yeah, exactly. And then when, at least with Cody now, I think he's in a healthy place as champion that he has enough opposition for him to face in the future.
Hmm.
You have Drew McIntyre, you have Randy Orton, you have Kevin Owens, you have LA Knight, you have Sami Zayn, you have all these different characters that Cody has not interacted with across the ring enough that it could still make him as interesting. And you also have, The Rock, you have a proposed rematch with Roman possibly because again, they're
Hmm.
one on one piece. You have Solo Sokoa. You have all these people who are in the ranks where it can make Cody Rhodes's road as champion as more interesting. And I think because they kind of like stepped off the gas pedal a little bit with Cody having more established with Brock Lesnar, with the Judgment Day, and even though like this past year, like as champion, he could have done that as champion, and just kind of further solidified him as, hey, this is the guy that we can make believable enough to dethrone Roman Reigns.
Yeah, and like, given that they built him up, he's on fire, he's doing well. You could kind of do a number of things with him. Like, you could build a stable around him. You
Mm-hmm.
could have him work with up and comers and give them a rub. You can have the good old like American Ooze storyline with
Mm-hmm.
him and Jay kind of come back now that Jay's kind of doing a solo thing and he's back and they got along so well and they worked well together.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a number of things with him now that he is like one of the top guys, and like you said, he does have a wealth of talent to fight against. And you know him and Seth would be a good one. Again, you mentioned him and Sammy would be a good one. And like, you have so many things that you can do with him now that you put the time into it. And like you said before, those coming in who didn't know who he was, 6 months is not really a long time, like story wise. Like
Hmm.
you could do a lot in 6 months, but you really have to be like meticulous and like really map it out.
Hmm.
So them kind of prolonging it, again, I see why people are frustrated, but I can also see why it would be beneficial, like you said.
Hmm. And that was Cody Rhodes' hero's journey. Now, Marcus, what was your favorite part of the hero's journey of Cody Rhodes' career?
Um, Obviously, like finishing the story is a big one because you have Roman, who great worker, sure, but for how long has Roman been shoved down people's throats? And he when the Shield was going on, Vince was telling people, oh, make Roman look good,
Hmm.
make him look big, make him
Like
you
him
know eh,
strong.
yeah, make him look strong. And it was funny because if you watched like the whole Shield run, you obviously some people would like naturally enjoy Roman, but you have people that are just like they have their favorites anyway. Like out of the Shield run, I lean more toward Ambrose than anybody.
Yeah,
Like
I was the
I
same.
was a big, yeah,
Yeah.
like, and if I had to pick something outside of obviously like him winning the title, I would say character wise probably undashing and dashing, just
Hmm.
because it was a very interesting, again, it could have been very generic, it could have felt flat, he could have floundered, but he really did it and like put the time in. And there was the little like vignettes of him, this is how you keep your skin right, and this this is what I do, this is how I floss. And I think that made it because you have somebody like a Lex Luger, and the whole thing was like, look at Lex Luger, look at his muscles, huh? Huh?
Yeah.
Versus like somebody like Cody, who he's wearing the mask and he doesn't want you to look at him. He's telling people like, I'm ugly, but you're uglier, so I don't look at you either. And like they're passing out the bags for people to wear over their heads, and they're doing the character work. So I would say it'd be probably between like that and New Japan, because again, you have a situation where you're coming in, people know who you are, but just because people know who you are, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do well.
Hmm.
Just because you're a name doesn't mean that you're going to come in, you're going to be a key player. Because how many times have you seen it, not even in wrestling but other things, whether it be business, whether it be sports, whether it be entertainment, like, oh, we got this person for this thing and everybody's excited, and it comes in, it's just a giant wet fart, and like nobody, and you're just like, and then you also look back on that and you're like, remember that time everybody was excited for that thing? It turned out to be horrible. Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. So having the support system of, everybody that was there and like putting himself into that mold. And again, it's a whole new system. You come in and you're not necessarily the homegrown talent. I think those two things were probably like my 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
So how about yourself?
Oof. I was a big fan of Dash and Cody Rhodes and Undash and Cody Rhodes because me and my friend who was occasionally on here at DFD, Don't Fall David, for whenever there was like a big faction, we would always take like the opposite guy. Like he was a big DiBiase guy, I was a big Cody Rhodes guy. So when I
Hmm.
saw him succeed, it was kind of like brownie points. I'm like, haha, my guy's doing better than your guy.
Yeah.
But just seeing like him take like a character like the dashing and undashing character, and then promote it to a point where he's a featured part of the show when
Yeah.
really it should have been anything but a featured part of the show. Like he
Hmm.
made it so that he would get over. And once that happened, it was kind of like off to the races because he was bringing prestige back to the Intercontinental Championship, which people have been clamoring for a long time at that point. But then during those I call the dark ages of the IC and US titles, you would have the champions, but they would always lose for whatever reason to like main event guys,
Hmm.
and that just like confused me because I was like, why aren't the main event guys going for these titles? Because like they beat the champion, and that
Yeah.
just kind of like put some like disrespect on it. And plus, like he brought back the classic Intercontinental Championship, so I was always a fan of that. But that and his his run in New Japan, I did like a lot, just because it was vastly different and kind of leaning in on the nepotism, but also making it his own kind of character. And then I always say I liked black hair Cody more than blonde hair Cody, but now it's like I'm so used to blonde hair Cody that black hair Cody seems weird.
Yeah,
But
like a relic of the past.
yeah, I did like black hair Cody when he was on the with the Ring of Honor, where he actually had the Ring of Honor on his finger.
Hmm.
And I just liked his personality and just like his heel character. And I think he came out in like he used to come out in like that squall kind of like jacket, from
Yeah,
Final Fantasy. I always thought that was like a cool look. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And then like him and bringing in an AEW, or not AEW, being the elite. He did something called Bernard the Business Bear, where he had a mascot called Barry the Drug Free Bear, but then it was Kenny underneath it. And then during the show, he brought someone that was called Bernard the Business Bear, and it's just this guy in a giant bear suit who just likes to talk about business. And like they were asking him, so does he dance? And Cody's like, no, he is just all business. It's just like a business bear who's just shaking hands as like a businessman. Just something silly like that. And also, I still do have a soft spot for Stardust, because
yeah.
great entrance, great presentation, even though it didn't really traject his career to anything further.
You know what I think would be really kind of funny if they took. All right, so you remember like the movie The Mask?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What if they did that with Stardust though? Like,
Oh, okay.
if you like, because you know how he had the like the star gloves. Like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say like there, somebody is like in the locker room, blah blah blah, and like they see the star gloves and like, yo, what is this? And everybody's like freaking out, and they come out
Hmm.
and they're like the next Stardust, and it just keeps like transitioning
Yeah.
from like superstar to superstar, just kind of like a funny little. Like a comic book esque, like, you have the powers now,
Yeah.
you have the suit.
I was thinking like along the same lines for a while, but something a little bit different. So I'm going like Spider-Man 3 with it, and then Stardust is like a symbiote
Yeah,
kind of deal. And then it's just kind of like the symbiote just kind of takes over somebody's body, and it's kind of like the black suit and Venom, where it just
yeah,
affects people differently. And I think that'd be cool if like Cody had like a storyline with somebody who just like got taken over by the Stardust symbiote, but it was called something completely different. So
yeah.
something like that.
Like they could do like a lot, or maybe like in the storyline, even if something as simple as just like all their gear was in the same bag,
Hmm.
and like they accidentally like swapped bags or something,
And then like
and
during the weeks, like the paint just gets like more and more like
defined, and
defined. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I would love to see that. And if it does happen, hey, you heard it here first.
yeah, man. When you see Star McIntyre or a Star Zane, or
Or Drew Dust.
yeah, Drew Dust, uh, you know, Jade Stargill. You heard it here first, baby.
That's right. Marcus, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Hero's Journey with Cody Rhodes. Where can the people find you if they're interested in following you and what you do?
I kind of sniff around stuff on the good old IG. I'm not really a big social media guy, as I said before, but if you think my takes are trash, and you want to give me the Dave Meltzer, -5 stars, you can hit me on IG. It's QUEZMAV. Shoot me a message. Tell me how I'm trash. Tell me how I'll never work in this business, and give me like the good old the good old Jim Crockett Promotions burial, or if I miss something, or if you like something, or if you just want to chit chat, talk shop. There's that. I'm on Snapchat. It's SIRMAV. I'm pretty active on that. So I'll talk back. But yeah, man, this was great as always. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me. I always like talking shop with you, my man.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And again, you could follow us if you're not listening on Spotify. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We were on Google Podcasts, but then they got X-nayed a little bit. So
Mm.
it is Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. And of course, you could follow me on the Instagram and the TikTok at Retold Richie Mars. New content every day on the TikTok. TTFN, ta-ta for now. and we will see you next time.